the regulations in Saudi is as robust as what's happening in the US markets.
Please put your hands together to welcome Mr. Mohanad to the stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Khturham, for the nice introduction. And glad to be here back in KAUST to speak about, as you described it, science, technology, innovations, policies, and how it all affects and complements the IR 4.0. First, I'd like to give you some brief background about what we do as a company in Johnson Controls. And then we'll talk more about Industrial Revolution 4.0 and how it's helping us to excel at what we do, not only in Saudi, but being a manufacturing hub for Johnson Controls regionally, and most recently going to the world. Johnson Controls is a company that is specialized in building technology. It started with Warren Johnson. He was a university professor. He was the first one who created the room thermostats, which we take now for granted. And that creation took place about 140 years ago. That's when the first room thermostat was created. And out of that company came Johnson Controls with a market capitalization of $40 billion. The company has about 140,000 employees worldwide, and I'm honored to be heading the RHQ for Johnson Controls in the region. So not only responsible for the Saudi operations, but many other geographies within the region. As I said, the speaker actually described, we have the largest manufacturing footprint in the MENA region, not too far from here, King Abdullah Economic City, where we manufacture wide areas of products that are needed in Saudi, in the regions, and also abroad. I'm emphasizing the points that it's not a local factory, it's not a regional factory, but it's a global factory because it's intertwined of the topic of today, how the technological advancements is helping us to be a global player. So now if you were to visit, and I wish we had to make this presentation at the factory, it would be a lot easier to bridge the gap between the knowing and the doing, I call it. But our factory has about 11 different production lines. We have an R&D centers, we have independent laboratories, and we also have there what we call net zero center for data-enabled technologies, all under one roof. And the complexities of the products and the services requires different type of engineering, different type of challenges when it comes to supply chain resilience, and different type of communications that happens at a regional and at a global level. I'll speak about four main pillars that are related to the needs for Industrial Revolution 4.0. The first one I'd like to speak about has to do with the people. And today we are the largest employer in King Abdullah Economic City. And what that means, it means you have, when you look at the basic principles of the IR 4.0 is the people and the ability of the people to interact with technologies, with the assets and the processes, and be a global communicators. We do have in CAIC what we call communities of practice. And that is really a platform for our employees to get together in a voluntary basis to talk about global best practices and how it affects their day-to-day operations within the factories. And for us, I mean, when we talk about the 4 industrial revolutions, I mean, the main driver today is the people that are driving and shaping the culture within the organization. And we put lots of emphasis on the training and development of the individuals that we have on the shop floor. So communities of practice is one approach to it, and it comes from the field of knowledge management and knowledge sharing. It's a concept that got created long ago, and it started with the US Navy, but now we see the deployment of the basic principles of knowledge management and knowledge sharing across different manufacturing facilities within Johnson Controls. And as I said, the basic principles is you want to make sure people on the shop floor have the ability and get the required training to communicate, not only within the facility, but also be able to communicate with different manufacturing facilities that manufacture similar type of products globally. And the idea here is to increase the employees' efficiencies and know-how about the products and the services we provide. Also, when it comes to technology, we employ the latest and greatest ERP systems, but that's not really the differentiator for us. On top of the ERP systems that we have different number of softwares. And Johnson Controls globally, they employed the Johnson Controls, what we call JCMS, Johnson Controls Manufacturing System. And it started actually, I mean, Johnson Controls, for those of you that are not familiar with the company, part of the business lines of what we do was manufacturing of automotives. We were one of the biggest manufacturers of automotives. So the concepts of JCMS came from automotives and industry. And the idea there was to have one global benchmark where you are able to rate factories against each other in terms of the level of quality, efficiencies, and productivities. And when it came now to the Industrial Revolution 4.0, I'm happy to see now our factories are actually indexing each other against the 4.0 principles. And it's been a journey. I mean, frankly, it's not a panacea. We've started as a factory. Also, when I talked about the 11 production lines that we have, we started as a very highly customized factory. So you couldn't do large scale of manufacturing. We did not use lots of robotics when we started. And today, when I talk about technology, if you visit our factories, when it comes to residential line of applications, you will see more robotics, more alignment with the global factories, because what you want to make sure of is the productivities of the machineries are benchmarked globally. The productivities of the individuals working on the machineries are also benchmarked globally. That's when it comes to the residential type of application, because we're talking about mass level of productions. When you move, and about 3-4 weeks ago, we've celebrated our first shipments to the US, where we're manufacturing Saudi-made chillers to the US. And what that meant transfer of technology. You have to have a global platform that is used in Saudi, and the output of that global platform should not deviate from the global output that any other Johnson Controls factories have in the world, which means the certifications of the products that's getting out of Saudi applies to the same. We have the same level of certification that the US factories got and China. And if there's any deviation, we will lose the licensing, US would lose the licensing, and also China would lose the licensing. What that means in practice, the engineering changes that you apply in Saudi got to be the same level of engineering changes that happens in the US and China, the bill of materials, the suppliers that you use and the parts, they all got to be synchronized, aligned at a global level. And it is hard to do that given, I know you're all about to start, inshallah, your manufacturing facilities. And I'll tell you why this is especially difficult in the Saudi example. We use in our manufacturing facility about 4,000 different parts to manufacture our products. We have almost 400 different suppliers. About 80 to 90% of those suppliers are outside the kingdom. When I benchmark that against our factories in China, they have about 33% of their supplier base only 2 hours away from the manufacturing facility. So when we talk about just in time, it happens instantaneously, and you don't have to carry lots of supply chain, lots of parts, business within your facility. And it is systems that are speaking to each other. It's not manual work. There is an integration between the ERPs that they have along with their supplier base. That level of integration doesn't exist here today in Saudi. And it's a big challenge for us. So within the Johnson Controls umbrella, I'm always reminded that, hey, you do manufacture too much under one roof. And usually my reply, well, I cannot afford to do it any other ways. You cannot, because the resilience of the supply chain is not there. It's just the ecosystem of the supply chain is not there. So when I talk about technology for such a products, then you're gonna have to have the technology and the people that can know and to how to communicate and interact with different factories. Because even frankly, people believe, perception is, hey, the best technology or the best practices are in the West. No, when we compare the maturity that's happening also in the East, there is something to be discovered, East, West, and also locally. I always like to use the analogy of we try to unleash capacities rather than create capacities, because we are seeing that. So technology is important, and the employment of technology is quite important. I like always to use also, put it in perspectives. We talk about data, we talk about information, we talk about knowledge, and then we talk about wisdom. And we started by talking data-enabled technology, and now we're moving, let's take that even a step higher, and what data we need to put in which context for it to be information, and then for that information to be actionable knowledge, and how do we then go and navigate within the factory system between knowledge that we acquired in the residential and move it to in the applied systems, and that's really the real challenge that we have. So when we talk about the Industrial Revolution 4.0, we're talking about that. We're talking about the wisdom. We know that when it comes to IT, everyone got it. When it comes to automation, we're seeing it. But comes to digitizations, comes to intellectualization, come to intelligentization, that's the real differentiator today. And when we shipped to the US, it meant that we had to be competitive when it comes to prices, the productivities of the products, and also the speed of delivery. And you have to have a robust operational technologies and the information technology. The operations, I call it the IT and the OT. They got to be aligned for you to be able to serve your end customers. Another interesting fact, people ask me, well, how come the US did not have the capacity? Why are they going and sourcing from Saudi? US factories, it's a US-based companies shipping to the US. And the answer is quite interesting. And I say it got to do also with data centers. It got to do with data that are being generated, and our US factories are maxed out in capacity. Data centers that are built today, I mean, we're seeing a huge demand in the US. Saudi, we're seeing, I mean, a nice ramp up. I mean, I believe last week there was also the semiconductor conference in Riyadh trying to encourage companies to do more. But it is a global, it's creating global bottleneck for supply chain. It's creating global opportunities actually for Johnson Controls globally, but also it created opportunities for us in Saudi to cater for the US, for the US market. But I just wanted to kind of highlight that to illustrate the importance of that. Also, I mean, so that's when it comes to the technology. The culture of the organization has to reflect data-enabled, information-enabled, knowledge-based decision making, and it truly comes from the top. I mean, as I said, when I now speak to our manufacturing directors, it's not about how are you doing. No, I want to know how are you doing against other manufacturing facilities. I mean, for me, good is the enemy of great. I mean, you could celebrate, but unless I'm able to see that level of benchmarking, I'm not usually convinced. And it's quite extensive on the output of the KPIs that we look at on our factories. So that's also there. Comes down to the laboratories and the R&Ds that we have. The regulations in Saudi when it comes to building technologies, HVAC technologies, is quite draconian. I'm talking about here the regulations. Last week we were blessed that we got an award as an ESCO certified company. And basically we do lots of energy auditings. And Saudi, if you've seen the regulations, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the stars ratings of the efficiency of equipments that are being sold, which meant that you had to have your own testing facility, your own R&D and laboratories testing products in Saudi. And when you want to cater for the Saudi regulations, the Egyptian regulations, and other regulations, China, and you had to have a robust R&D testing facilities under attached to your manufacturing facilities. And again, when we talk about IR 4.0, that means lots of collaborations with different engineering centers globally. And that's truly what we've been able to do. So when it came now to our export, we saw huge advantage. The Saudi economy is the largest in the Middle East region. And this truly creates, so as entrepreneurs, when you look at Saudi, my advice is look at Saudi and look at what's happening, what opportunities you can get out of the Middle East regions. And today we are exporting to about 26 different countries. And when it came to the US market, we did not have to change much. The regulations in Saudi is as robust as what's happening in the US markets. And credits really goes to, I mean, the regulators in Saudi. Another point I'd like to raise here of why 4.0 is important. When we look at the national industrialization strategy today, we're talking about 12,000 factories that exist today in Saudi. So from the establishment of the kingdom till today, there are about 11,000 factories that get built. The national industrialization strategy talks about an additional about 25,000 factories by year of 2035. So in the next 10 years or so, we expect to see additional double the number of factories. But when you look at the number of jobs to be created, we're looking at almost 900,000 today, and the aim for that only to go to about 2 million jobs. which means what? It's not going to be heavily dependent on people. The aim here is for manufacturing facilities to depend on robotics, cobots, to reach the kingdom's vision of 2030. And the government incentives around this is quietly generous, but it's not used. We attended a meeting with His Excellency, the Minister of Industrial Affairs, and he said 10 to 15% of the incentives that are available for the private sector is being utilized. And many of those incentives also got to do with the IR 4.0. And even actually us as a company, we're not doing well in taking advantage of these government fundings. So that's another point that I wanted to bring. I believe collaborations with academic institutions like KAUST and others can be of a great value for young entrepreneurs. And we have seen some of the benefits of that through different level of collaborations. And we do it locally and we do it globally. So at the end, I don't want to take more, but truly the Vision 2030, the industrial strategy that we have, the availability of the Exim Bank, the Saudi Export Development Authority, the ecosystem is created for companies to be able to take advantage and fully employ the principles of the 4.0 and looking at what's coming next. And with that, I'd like to conclude and thank you very much for listening.